And away we go. It's the DFS Early Bird from Awesemo.com. Dan Strafford, Dave Lockren along with you on this Friday morning post-Thanksgiving hangovers. Hopefully you're shaking off the cobwebs from the tryptophan and from the extra shot of whiskey you may have done to avoid your family. We are here on the Early Bird to get you set for Friday's big NBA slate. I do want to tell you two things here at the top. One, you can still use the promo code EARLYBIRD. That'll get you 1 week free, all content at Awesemo.com. The other piece, though, you can use the promo code CYBERMONTH, and you can check out the free articles over there on Awesemo.com for this exact code. But CYBERMONTH is a code to get you 50% off your first month or 12 months at the price of 10. So you get $120 off. So Cyber Month is the promo code for that. You can also use the free, obviously, still, but Cyber Month, obviously, a very good deal there. So with that said, Dave, the NBA hasn't gone according to script. Thanksgiving, not necessarily a milestone, but clearly a day off for all teams. Looking back over the first 5 or so weeks, not exactly how you would have written it out if you were back on October 17th.
For sure. By the way, I think the tryptophan thing, isn't that a myth? Isn't that just not
totally
true? Okay. I wasn't sure. I think it's just that you eat so much and you're just doing your body, certain harm. But that's exactly what I did on Thanksgiving. It was well worth every stomach ache.
Are you a turkey fan?
I mean, yeah, I'll eat plenty, but that's turkey's not my go-to.
Exactly. That's what I was saying.
It's a complimentary piece.
Agreed. The sides are where it's at.
The stuffing that's where it is.
Stuffing, mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce, all mixed into one pile of.
Hold on, don't forget sweet potato bake is my jam. Dude, sweet potato bake with the brown sugar on top. Oh, that'll give you some trouser action. Let me tell you.
It's been a while since we talked about trouser action.
I know. Oh, some green bean casserole is pretty delicious. Look, you can't go wrong. Thanksgiving dinner, man, is so good. But yeah, the turkey really kind of is just, it's a complimentary piece, right? It's an accent, like it doesn't really, it's not, I'll usually take a couple bites of it first, just to get it out of the way. But when I go back to get seconds, sure, I'm putting more turkey on the plate, but I don't think, I can't wait for Thanksgiving to be here so I can get stuffed on a bunch of turkey.
Right. Agreed. Yeah. I do like the house we were at. One made homemade raviolis, which is a nice side dish to go with, which I haven't really had all that often. But they also had a ham because some of the kids in the house don't like turkey at all, so they had ham. So I had ham, turkey, ravioli, stuffing, cranberry sauce. Like it was a. Do
they have honey baked ham around your way by any chance?
Yeah.
Delicious. It's way too expensive.
Oh, but you got to do it.
Yeah. I think I spent like $80 on a ham for Easter, and it was worth everything.
That's right. You walk into a butcher and you're like, oh crap, I'm going to be dropping way too much cash on this.
Yep. Yeah. Well worth it. But you talk about like where basketball is right now. We're about five plus weeks into it. Right around 5 weeks, and it's not a milestone, right? But it's not the All-Star break. It's not the midway point, which the All-Star break isn't, but generally people refer to it as that. But it is, it is the day where every team is off for the first time in a while. Give you a chance to kind of look at things and reflect upon what's gone right and what's gone wrong. Well, it's really, really interesting right now looking at the standings. You've got the Boston Celtics who have fallen to 9-9. I mean, I think they just hit, I'll call it rock bottom. I put it, if you're a Celtics fan right now, you're probably hitting the panic button. I don't think you need to, but there's no question people are. They just lost to the Knicks.
That's right? Damn right. Break them up. Break them up.
Yeah. Wasn't that game in Boston? Might not. I thought it was in Boston. Not exactly what you're looking for heading into Thanksgiving. They have not looked very good. And they've snuck some tight wins against some bad teams too. They're 9-9. They're 8th. Like they are literally, they're last in the play. They're 8th in the conference. Now they'll be better than the Magic when the season comes to an end, and the Pistons and the Hornets. I get all of that, but it's not been an easy run for them. And I guess kind of sometimes less is more, because this team looked just the chemistry and the cohesion last season when you had Rozier and Smart getting big minutes and Tatum kind of carrying the heavy load. Now you have Irving, who is putting up very big point totals each night, and he's playing like, he's putting up huge totals and scoring and his shooting percentages up there. But him and Hayward, you have to look at this and be like, I wonder. There's no question that their return has something to do with this. There's no question. You don't lose to the Knicks. You don't drop to 500 through 18 games if there's not some lack of chemistry. And any Boston fan or anyone that writes on the Celtics, I've been reading a lot on them. I'm not a Boston fan. They're all talking about it. Like that as good as Brad Stevens is, and I think we all know he's a good coach, he has not done a good job of figuring out how to put all these pieces together now that Irving and Hayward are back. And that's just a fact.
Absolutely, I would agree. And living up in this area, there's a bit of consternation around it. Definitely some concern at present. No fire Stevens chance as of yet, but
I'm sure there's some, even though
there's some sports talk. Yeah, there's some sports talk of maybe it's time for a change. Okay, right. Guys.
How about the Warriors, though? They've lost 4 straight games. I mean, I know Curry's out. I know Green is out, but still, you can't tell me that Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson aren't enough to get you some wins, right? Like they're still two of the best players at their position in the entire league. So that to me is quite surprising. They're reeling right now. You got to wonder how much of that has to do with off the court issues, because I do think that affects teams. We've seen it affect teams. So it'll be interesting to follow them. And then on the other hand, the Grizzlies are first in the Western Conference.
I actually did scroll through on Wednesday during the day job when I was supposed to be working at the standings and saw that. And
yeah, Blazers are second.
It's absurd.
Third.
Because the Grizzlies have sort of lost they're fine defensively and they play, they're still playing solid defense, but they're not that slow pace team, and they're playing well. And Conley, I mean, you've said it a couple times on the podcast, Conley's finally healthy. He's finally fully healthy, and that is such a huge difference for them.
And the 3 teams at the top of the East right now, the Raptors, the Bucks, and the Sixers, since Jimmy Butler has arrived, all 3 of those teams look to be playing really well together. And while the East as a whole is not deep, right, there's some bad teams. The Cavs, the Hawks, the Knicks, the Bulls, the Heat are not very good. The Wizards have been terrible. The Wizards are another story where you just you scratch your head and wonder what the hell happened. You're in the East and you have Brad Beal and you have John Wall, and let's not blame it on Dwight Howard, because they sucked before Dwight Howard came back too.
Absolutely.
Right? And you've got Otto Porter, and Oubre off the bench is a decent piece. They tried to bolster their bench. Markieff Morris is not a terrible player, and they're 6-11. Like they're worse than the Nets. So that conference isn't great, as a whole, as a collective. But when you look at the top, the Raptors, the Bucks, the Sixers, I think the Pacers are a good team, and I will absolutely still include the Celtics. The top of the East is really quite solid.
It is, and I'm intrigued by what the Wizards do. You've seen rumors coming out that the Hornets reached out on Brad Beal. There have been, discussions on rumor mill sites about maybe the Lakers making a play for someone like Bradley Beal. Obviously, LeBron likes his shooters. Will they break it up early? Will they make a run at rebuilding early on this season, or will they try to muddle along, get things right, and probably push for a 6 seed, a 7 seed in the East if they get things right? It's an intriguing question in today's NBA. The Warriors look vulnerable. Obviously, you assume Curry comes back healthy, Draymond gets right eventually, and they figure things out. But are the Wizards beating them? No, obviously not. So do the powers that be there make early trades to try to get out ahead of the potential big trade deadline later on in the winter? It'll be a fun one to watch.
I'm very much looking forward to the trade deadline. I think you're going to see a ton of movement. I think you're going to see a lot of movement prior to the deadline as well.
Yeah, as we get all of those players just run into the ground by their head coach. So that always makes for a good storyline. We're going to go position by position here on the DFS Early Bird. Lofty will give you his early takes on each one. And then, of course, he does have the deep dive right up and then the deeper dive show. You do have the NBA DFS strategy show in the morning. Josh, are you on, or is Adam on Friday morning?
Friday morning, I write the deep dive, which is going to be an adventure in its own right. I got a 13 and a 14 game slate this week, so it'll be fun to bang that one out. But it'll be Adam and Josh in the strategy show, myself and Adam on the deep dive.
And then you get live up until lock with Ed Fear and I believe it's Spags on Friday night, but I will double check that schedule to make sure that is what is correct there. So you get all that content over on YouTube, all of the writing and rankings and projections behind the paywall.
Chris and Eddie, you're right, Chris and Eddie.
Yeah, so there you have it. You have all that behind the paywall at osmo.com. So let's do this. We're going to go quickly, give a quick look at each position, get you sort of a player pool to start your research with. Things can change throughout the day. Injuries are key here. Dave, any injuries you're keeping an eye on that could greatly influence this slate?
Well, yeah, some that are questionable, some that are already out. We know that Dre is already out. We know that Curry is out for at least another 2 or 3 games. So those are two, obvious big injuries there. Also, Alfonso Mckinney is out. And, normally you'd be like, well, why are you mentioning that? Well, I mentioned that only because with Draymond also out, it stands to reason that somebody like Jerebko, could play bigger minutes. He only played 21 minutes in that game, but they also got blown out. And he's actually rebounding really well on a permanent basis. The guy is still really cheap. So we'll talk a little bit about him. Dante DiVincenzo is still out. Goran Dragic and Tyler Johnson are both still out. And then you have Hassan Whiteside questionable with knee tendonitis. So big things could happen in Miami. That's a lot of injuries. Dion Waiters, I think he's expected to return soon. Don't quote me, but I believe he is. Oladipo is also questionable. Pau Gasol remains out. Another big one too, Dan. Domantas Sabonis is questionable. This is a guy that's just been absolutely ferocious off the bench, right? I mean, only 19 minutes last game, still had 15, 6, and 25 fantasy points before departing. That was also a game that they lost in blowout fashion. The Pacers playing so many blowouts, whether it's one way or the other, it's really frustrating. I think if you take Sabonis off, you get even higher usage for Tyreke Evans, who once again lost minutes to the blowout. That's a big issue there. We'll keep an eye on Depot and Sabonis. If both of them are out, we're getting a lot of value. Alex Len questionable, and then Poitras is still out, and Spellman is probable, but I still think Dedmon could get around 30 minutes if Len sits. Dwight Howard questionable. Al Horford questionable. We expect Kawhi, Miles, and Anunoby, all 3 to be back. Kawhi was just out on rest. And then I thought there was one more. Ed Davis questionable. That really isn't important. But as you can see, a lot of we could see a lot of different swings. And this isn't even including the news that'll break at like 7 or 6 p.m. Eastern that came out of thin air.
You do have Bogdanovich and Collison on Indianapolis here. That could make for Indiana. Do that at least once a year. There it is.
Get it out of the way early.
Exactly, Thad. Yeah, there's a lot of value that could come out of Sabonis and Oladipo being out. So keep an eye on that one for sure. So starting at point guard, obviously top talent here. You have Westbrook. I assume you want to keep Harden for shooting guard here from a discussion standpoint. Walker's at 9,600, Kyrie at 91, 2 guys who have seen a ton of usage over the past couple of weeks. Lillard, Simmons, Wall, Booker. What are some of your favorite plays here? Who are the guys that early on, as you're trying to figure out lineup construction, who you're going to write up in the deep dive, who are the guys that are piquing your interest as potential further research and potential plays come Friday night? Yep.
Obviously a super deep slate. So as we always kind of preface it with foundational plays, we're looking at a first look, but there's a lot here. Westbrook and Harden are still pretty affordable. James Harden is coming off a monster 72 fantasy point performance that came against Detroit. This is an interesting home and home series here. So they played at home and now they play Detroit on the road. I'm not a matchup based, or I'm sorry, he crushed them last game, which means he has to crush them again. Now it's James Harden. He can smash anyone when he's up to it, when he's feeling, you know what he shot from the line? Take a guess. What did he shoot from the line in that game?
No idea.
19 for 19.
So funny. I was going to say 19 out of 20, but I did not say that. So
But 19 for not. Well, I was going to give you a chance. You said no idea. It sounded like you were giving up early.
I did. That was a white towel, definitely.
Harden's getting to the line at a ridiculous clip. Him and Embiid. It's just every night double digits. I actually do think I like Harden a little bit more than Westbrook here, but both of them are in play now. Once again, the same issue that we dealt with on Wednesday. The two players that are out, or the two teams. What did we figure? It's the Clippers and Dallas.
Yes.
That aren't playing. So you're not talking about any studs, right? It's not like the Pelicans or the Sixers or the Bucks are off the slate. So you have on DraftKings 7 guys above 10K. So Westbrook and Harden are both guys that I like, but I don't know how much I love them. You have Joel Embiid against Cleveland. You have Giannis against Phoenix. You have Anthony Davis against the Knicks in New York. Maybe that game stays close, right? So I like them, but I really like the other guys as well. And I like those guys who we will get to shortly. I like them a little bit more. I also had talked about Simmons, right? I told you I took a premature L there, saying that I thought he would be better with Butler's arrival. First 2 games with Butler were not good. And I said, damn, I'm wrong. And then I ended up, I think, being right. I actually think that I'm spot on. And I will pat myself on the back until further notice, and I will take the L if it turns around. But Simmons, over his last 3 games, has attempted 13, 13, and 18 field goal attempts. He's shooting 60% from the field, which I love to see in that span. He's been more aggressive. Butler being on the court clears out the paint for him, and that's really important. And now you look at these numbers, Dan. He's averaging over this span 21 points, 10 rebounds, and 8.5 assists. So he's averaging an assist and a half shy of a triple-double. I think it's a really good matchup against Cleveland. People will continue not to play him. And if you do, for some reason, want to take a balanced approach, I do have interest. I still think that Simmons on DraftKings, specifically with the triple-double bonus, that 6-point bonus is big, right? That allows room for a whole lot of upside there. So that's where I'm going at the top. And in the mid-range, there's some guys that we'll talk about at shooting guard, but I don't think you need to pay for Kemba here, Dan. I don't think you need to pay. Kyrie Irving's in a good spot facing Atlanta, but I still don't think I want to go north of 9K there. It's just going to be difficult to do.
Makes sense. I think there's going to be other places to pay up on this slate. Do want to take a quick trip here to the bottom end of point guard.
Let me just I missed Lillard. I'm sorry. Lillard is 9K on DraftKings, and he's facing a Warriors team that we've talked about at the top of the show really has not looked good at all, right? They are really struggling, and they're down Dre still. They're down Curry. Defensively, they have struggled.
Well, so over the last 10 games, and not a small sample, but they are 29th in the NBA in defensive rating.
Amazing.
Only the Knicks are worse off over those 10 games.
Amazing. So I think actually if I'm in that 9K range between Kemba and I'll throw Simmons in there, Kemba, Simmons, Kyrie, and Lillard, Dame's definitely going to be my guy here. I think is a really good price point for a guy that in a spot like this could give you 60 fantasy points.
I do want to touch on a couple of one cheap guy mainly, and you talked about the Knicks against the Celtics. Trey Burke has been really dynamic over the past 4 games, and he continues to have a price tag, at 4,200, I think, or 4,400, in a matchup with New Orleans, a team that struggled against some point guards over the course to start the year. Do you believe in this Trey Burke renaissance of sorts? We know he's a potential prolific scorer when given the opportunity, and obviously he struggles at times, but put up double-digit assists last time out, had a big outing from DraftKings point perspective. Is Trey Burke somebody from a cheap, maybe dart throw that could be in the player pool when all is said and done on Friday night?
100%. Absolutely 100%. Is there risk? There's absolutely risk. But you know what mitigates that risk, Dan? The fact that he's 4,400, right? I mean, David Fizdale's backcourt rotation has been pretty wild. But I think you can at least take some pleasure or comfort in knowing that he's played 26 minutes in 4 straight games. So it looks like right now that's around his floor. And Ntilikina, as we talked about, has pretty much shot himself out the court. Yes, he's getting some minutes at times, but I don't think he's really going to steal much away from Trey Burke. So, yeah, I think absolutely Burke is in play. And Fizdale is going to have a very tough time pulling him off the court right now with the fact that he's shot over his last 4 games, 10 for 13, 11 for 20, 8 of 15, 11 for 20. 3-point shooting has been really spectacular. There's nothing really suspect about his game right now outside of the fact that there's so many guards on this team. 4,400 is too cheap, Dan. Not a great matchup. He'll probably see some Drew Holiday, but as long as the volume's there at 4,400, you're not worried about that. Like, you can definitely take that risk.
Any other cheap point guards before we move on to shooting guard?
You would think that Miami has a lot of them, but they're kind of not really eligible at
really
point
true.
guard. You know, they're not really eligible there. So we're going to talk about them, but just because 2 point guards are out doesn't mean they're eligible there. Ryan Arcidiacono, not a great player, not going to shoot a lot, but I think it's reasonable to point him out at 3,700. Not the most difficult of matchups. You know, he's had a few games here. Actually, he's eclipsed 25 fantasy points in 3 of his last 5. So you get 25, 27, 28 fantasy points at 3,700. You're certainly not upset about that. His price hasn't come up at all. And I actually wouldn't be surprised one bit to see this game stay close because neither of these teams are all that good. So, yeah, I think he's not a great play. We got a 2.5 point spread in this game, and there's not a ton of dirt cheap value at point guard. But as you pointed out, Burke is your main man here.
Here we go to shooting guard next. You mentioned the Heat. You have a guy like Magruder. Wow, my Jersey accent coming out there. Magruder.
Yeah, Rodney Magruder.
Boston. Maybe more.
What
more
a player.
Boston
What a player.
Go park the car. You have him eligible here at shooting guard, obviously, with the different injuries. He's questionable. I have not found what his actual injury was from Wednesday night. He left the court, but I haven't been able to find why.
I thought he came back. He returned.
He did, but like there's no like what happened to him, why he left the court. But
yeah,
an interesting Vice Sports article on him actually about
he
being.
May have had to take a dump or something. That oftentimes is what it is when they disappear, come back, and they look a whole lot lighter.
It's just. Amazing. Shooting guard at the top does have injuries, though. So you do have Curry. Kawhi is back with the back-to-back. Will be in there. But you have Oladipo here. So that will shake some things up. You mentioned Harden at above 10K. You get Beal at 7,700. Donovan Mitchell. Zach Lavine is 7,600. We know the usage is gigantic for Lavine here in this matchup with Miami. Should be just the same. Who do you like at shooting guard as some of the names that at least, again, may be in the mix for write-ups for the deep dive on Friday?
Man, Zach Lavine's still too cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He was 7,900 last game. He dropped 40 fantasy points. That's not killing you. That's definitely not burning you, right? It's not maybe not winning you a tournament, but it's also not destroying you. And we continue to get very consistent production from Lavine. Just erase the Milwaukee and Boston games. 2 really tough matchups. Look, Boston has not played very well, but they also did win that game in a blowout, and they still have a very stout defense. And the same with Milwaukee. They're I think the only team in the league right now that's top 5 in offensive and defensive efficiency. So I don't mind throwing those out. Especially given that both were blowouts, even though they did have like a 20-point lead or 15-point lead over Milwaukee at halftime, quickly erased in the second half. But, outside of that, Zach Lavine had scored 20-plus points in every single game to start the year, right? He scored 20-plus points in each of his first 14 games. Then he didn't in 2 straight, and then he got back with 29 points and 41 fantasy points. He went to 60 or 7,900 down to 7,600. It's just a really good price point. Even at 85 on FanDuel, I have no problem with it because in competitive games, Lavine is giving you 37, 38 minutes, maybe more. We've seen upwards of 40 in regulation. So when you're getting that much run with high usage, a slightly better assist rate than we've seen, he's just a very good play. I also think DeRozan has been letting us down. But he's down to 8,200, and he still offers monster upside. Like DeRozan can go off at any time. He's one of the best scorers in the entire league. If Oladipo's out, especially, I think I like him more because Indiana actually could just blow the doors off of San Antonio if Oladipo is healthy. They actually did last time these teams faced in San Antonio. So yeah, I like DeRozan quite a bit if Oladipo is out. I expect that game to stay competitive. Elsewhere in the mid-range, I think you at least have to give a look to Donnie Mitchell. he's still cheap, coming off a really strong game. The peripherals haven't been great this year, but you'll take the 20, 23, 30 shots a game, and you can live with that, right? He's still really cheap. He's 76 on FanDuel too, which is ridiculously inexpensive. So I just keep going back to the well with a lot of these mid-range guys, and I think we have to throw Josh Richardson into the mix as well.
Yep.
We talked about no point guards, but Josh Richardson played 39 minutes last game. You got no Dragic, you got no Tyler Johnson. He played 39 minutes. That could come down a little bit. Wade was in foul trouble, and that might have something to do with it. But I'm still going back there. I think Richardson's a perfectly fine play.
Any cheap guys here that at least are? I mentioned Magruder to actually pronounce the R at the end of that name.
Nice.
You have Tyreek.
It's not an AH.
No, it's definitely not. Oh boy. You have Tyreek down here if Oladipo's out. You mentioned if the game stays close, you should see plenty of run there. Bogdanovich has been a decent play for the Pacers as well. He's at 4,800. Any cheap guys here at shooting guard that at least from a research perspective or a roster construction perspective you think may be worthwhile to at least talk about here quickly?
Yeah, I'm not huge on Gordon Hayward, but he actually, for the first time in a long time, 14 field goal attempts might be a season high. I haven't checked yet. I will for the article, but played 32 minutes. Boston's not playing well enough right now for me to be like, oh yeah, they're just going to smoke Atlanta on the road. They should, but will they? I don't know. 32 minutes. He had his best game of the season. So he is still cheap. I think it's a fair price. The fact that he did get up a bunch of shots has me a bit more confident in him. And if he's going to be playing off of the bench and seeing a little bit of run away from Kyrie Irving, I like that too. Eric Gordon's been dreadful this year, Dan, absolutely dreadful. But he's come down to 4,500. Played 31 minutes last game. He's playing 30-plus minutes every single game. He's been dreadful, but I'm just throwing him out there in case, you like taking risks, because that's probably the guy that you'd be looking to do so with. You mentioned Magruder with the run that he's getting. I think you're absolutely right to mention him as well. So not anyone that jumps off the page is an excellent play, but there are certainly some options here. Gary Harris is still cheap. I know a lot of people were very high on David Nwaba last time. I think that may have been a matchup thing. Wouldn't be surprised to see him out of the starting lineup. But Dan, he only played 24 minutes in a really, really surprisingly competitive game. So I wasn't big on Nwaba the other day, and I certainly am not going to be playing him now after he only played 24 minutes.
I may or may not have played some Nwaba.
I don't blame anyone for it. I'm not saying it was a bad play.
What do you go, 0 for 3 and 12 minutes?
He's not a guy that he's just someone that's very tough for him to rack up peripheral. Like Kelly Oubre, when he's put into the starting lineup, it doesn't help him. It hurts him. I know he got in foul trouble last time, but still he only produced a half a fantasy point per minute in the minutes that he did play. Kelly Oubre's usage and everything else plummets in the starting lineup. Unless you can rack up solid rebounding and assists or even steal or stock totals, then it's tough for me to get interested in you, because it's so easy just to fall off the map.
It is a very specific point to make about NBA DFS, that just because someone's inserted into the starting lineup doesn't mean that they are a better play then. Like these guys on the second unit get run and get usage on the second unit that is vastly different than when they're out there with a Beal and a Wall and a Dwight Howard. Like Oubre's the fourth or fifth option at that point. And people jump at it. Oh, he's starting. He's going to play 30 minutes. Great. Let's get him in the lineup. No, actually, he's going to play less minutes potentially and get even less usage. So,
right. If he's going to play more minutes, then you can at least make the argument. If his per minute production goes from 0.95 to 0.85, but he's getting an additional 7 minutes, 10 minutes, then we can definitely go there. But Oubre, and Adam made this point on the deeper dive, Oubre was already playing big minutes off the bench. So it's not like anything was set to really change, even if he wasn't in foul trouble. More than 12 minutes, of course, but not 40.
I haven't busted this one out in a while, and I've almost said it, or thought I've almost said it multiple times. So moving forward to small forward, we go on here. Yanis, LeBron, KD, all above 10K. Obviously, Giannis is pretty much matchup proof. I think he's on pace to absolutely shatter Clint Capella's record for number of dunks in the season. I think it's by hundreds
Really?
at this point. I think it was Capella had like 250 last year, and I think Giannis is on pace for 380.
Wow.
Or something along those. I have to look for the exact number.
I'll tell you right now. I can look it up on NBA.com while
you do have LeBron, KD, Kawhi obviously is back from the back-to-backs. Paul George, you mentioned DeRozan, we mentioned Josh Richardson. You get to Tim Hardaway Jr., who for the Knicks has been playing pretty well and playing a hell of a lot of minutes. He's up in the upper 30s, has a matchup here with New Orleans, as we talked about Trey Burke before. And even getting down to the Rudy Gays and Taurean Prince's, Tyreek Evans is eligible here at small forward. Small forward, a decently deep position on this slate. Wondering at the top end, who do you like and who are some of the value guys you may have in your roster construction?
So, by the way, 76 dunks, okay? 76 dunks in 16 games. So that's 4.75 per game times 82 would be 389.5.
I was close. I was off by 9. Yeah.
That would be a lot of dunks.
I'm no mathematician.
Right. The fact that he's shooting 12% from 3 would indicate that we should expect him to keep dunking. Right. Yeah. Good position actually. And there's some value that we're going to get into here for once, like actual decent value. Nobody's a lock, but on a 14-game slate, but there's some good ones. It was great to see Giannis, shoot back onto the map with a big game. And I said this on the early bird in the deep dive and the deeper dive the other day, that it's not that Giannis isn't still putting up decent numbers. The problem is that, first of all, relative to what we're expecting from him, you need more than 51, 55 fantasy points per game. But what it was is that he wasn't having those games where he put up monster numbers in every single category across the board, like we've seen him do, until Wednesday night, where he had 33, 16 rebounds, 9 assists, and 3 steals. No blocks, but we'll take it, right? We'll take 1 assist shy of a triple-double with 73 fantasy points. Like, that's what you're looking for from Giannis when he just loads it up across the board. And, man, against Phoenix, I love everything about this matchup except the fact that they should just crush the Suns. Now, I'm a big fan of Devin Booker. I like DeAndre Ayton a lot. I actually think there's some good young talent. I even like TJ Warren for Phoenix. But they just don't gel, man. They're struggling. And Milwaukee's a 13.5-point favorite. Now, you have a 228.5 total here. I like that, obviously, as well. All of that lines up great for Giannis. The only concern, of course, is the blowout. And if it blows out, there is a chance that Giannis doesn't play a second in the fourth quarter. And that may be a risk you're willing to take, because it's also possible that he drops 68 fantasy points through 3 quarters. It's one of those matchups where you're just not concerned whatsoever.
Right.
And you've also got Phoenix playing it at an elevated pace. So that helps as well. They always play actually, is Phoenix playing down in pace this year? I think they are. Yeah, they're playing a little bit down in pace, but that's certainly, I'll tell you this much, it certainly hasn't affected the over-under here. And that's actually because Milwaukee's playing at a top 5 pace this year. So kind of surprising, but that's what you got. Expect big numbers from Giannis. The only concern is the blowout, of course. And then LeBron James against Utah. He's been great lately. I still don't think I'm going here. His price came down on DraftKings based on the matchup. Utah's defense hasn't been great lately, but I think you can go elsewhere here. I'm not too concerned about fading LeBron in this spot. It should be a close game, but at the same time, I don't mind going elsewhere. Kevin Durant, look, last game, 54 fantasy points, 35 minutes. You're not getting the monster numbers from him right now, but you can't ignore the 37% usage, the 38% assist rate, the 1.5 fantasy points per minute with Curry and Green off the court. Those are just those are numbers that are real. They check out, and you have to take that into consideration. So I would rank it Giannis, Durant, KD, or Durant, LeBron, factoring in price point as well, of course. And then in that mid-range, Jimmy Butler is going to have some really big games with the Sixers, but he's also going to have some very disappointing ones. I think this is a good price point, though. Cleveland, man, I'm sorry, Philly has done a great job of just letting teams stay in games. It's great for fantasy. It's horrible for fans. Like Embiid fouling Davis on the three-pointer with 1 second left, 2.5 seconds left. But they're also 13.5-point favorites, Dan. So that game could get out of control. And I think we're going to see that with a lot of these games on Friday, being that we have so many of them.
What about, you made mention of some value here. Who are the names that from the bottom portion of the position that at least, again, early on here, I sort of throw that caveat out there. We are taking a foundational look where the research should be. Who are some of the names that you'll be doing some further research on?
Sure. He hasn't been very good recently, but he is coming off a strong game. Maybe he can get a little bit of confidence back. Chetty Osman with 42 minutes last game. 42 minutes. He's really cheap. He's $4,300. I mean, the guy is super, super cheap. So you're not playing him at like $5,800 and hoping for a big game. $4,900 on FanDuel as well. I think that's definitely a spot where you can consider him. Also, keep in mind, James Johnson, who has small forward eligibility, played 23 minutes last game. And you could see that climb significantly here, even if Whiteside plays. But if Whiteside sits, you could definitely see some extended run for Johnson. I don't know how they're trying to wean him in or kind of slowly get him into the minutes, but he played 15, then he played 8 or 23. So he saw an 8-minute uptick. And you could get 27 plus minutes, 28 minutes here. And dude, he's 4K against Chicago. I'm going to have some James Johnson for sure. And then we already talked Wilson Chandler, but we already talked Gordon Hayward. But I think Wilson Chandler at least has to be considered. He did shoot 6 of 7 last game. It's a bit concerning that, he was so efficient, and you don't expect that to happen again. But it was actually a really good game. He's off the minute restriction. He played 31 minutes in back-to-back games. And if you're getting 31 minutes from him at literally all like right around minimum salary, Wilson Chandler is definitely not a bad play at all.
It's pretty funny. I was trying to find a new cover art for the podcast over there on YouTube, and figured I didn't have Westbrook as of yet. So I got Westbrook, and it's Chandler, but Chandler on defense, but it's him with Denver. And so I was hesitant to use it, but now that you've mentioned him, I feel like I need to keep it. We'll see. We'll see what I end up coming up with for the thumbnail here.
That's a tough one. I don't know. That's a tough one.
He's not on the team anymore. I feel like I'm misrepresenting him in a way. My journalistic background feels like I'm off base here, but
it's a bit tough.
Let's go to power forward next. You mentioned Yanis Lebron Kd already. Throw Anthony Davis, Blake Griffin, LaMarcus Aldridge, Randall, who has had a pretty good run of late there for the Pelicans, has a matchup with the Knicks front court, which has a few holes in it, if you will, from a defensive perspective. Mirotic, Aaron Gordon, and we move on from there. Power forward has some pieces here at the top from a nice upside perspective, but who are some of your favorites from a DFS roster construction?
You want to know what makes Anthony Davis such a spectacular fantasy option? Is the fact that he can go face Joel Embiid. Mm-hmm. And by the way, Joel Embiid with his best defensive performance of the season, he just showed up. I mean, he held Anthony Davis to 12 points in 41 minutes. 12 points, Dan. Anthony Davis scored 12 points in 41 minutes. He shot 4 for 13, 0 for 2 from 3. Embiid locked him down. But this is what makes him so great. He can score 12 points and still have 60 fantasy points, which is what he did. He had 16 rebounds, 6 assists, 5 blocks, and 5 steals. He had 20 points on stocks alone.
He had a 5x5, didn't he? Now that I look at it.
Yep, he sure did.
Oh, that's crazy. Yep.
12, 16, 6, 5, and 5. Insane. Absolutely insane. He had a 5x6 too, because he had 6 turnovers. But
that's a Westbrook. That's a Westbrook.
Yeah, exactly. That's a Harden too. That's what makes him so outstanding, is that like Davis didn't kill you, and he scored. If I told you that Davis is going to score 12 points, like turn your TV off, and then you realize he scored 59.5 fantasy points on 12 points. That's just unreal, because his defensive performance was phenomenal.
Yep.
Even though Embiid dropped 31 and 19 again. I love it. Anthony Davis here against the Knicks. It's just a really, really good spot. I don't see how you couldn't like him here. This feels like an easy 60-plus fantasy point game. Pels are only 7-point favorites. You have a 237-point total, the highest on the slate for sure. Pelicans are playing at the third fastest pace in the league this year. The Knicks are playing, 18th fastest, but you're not worried about a pace down spot. Yeah, I think both teams, I think it's going to be just a fast game. As you can see from the total, it's the only one in the 230s, and it's at 237.5. So I just love Davis here, one of my favorite, or one of the top plays on the entire slate, undoubtedly. And you should just continue to keep running him out there. The other bigs on this team, Mirotic has seen his usage siphoned from Davis recently. Look at his field goal attempts. He has an 11, 12, 7, 9. He did get into some foul trouble last game, but still, he's relying on peripherals and rebounds and blocks right now, which kind of concerns me based on his price still being above 7K. I think you need him down below 7K. I'll tell you though, in the mid range though, unless you see something, Dan, it's not very deep in the mid-range at all. I think what you're probably best off doing here is looking to some of that value to the James Johnsons, now could foul trouble be an issue? Absolutely, but he hasn't seen his price come up hardly at all. Noah Vonleh coming off back-to-back double-doubles. He has 30 points and 24 rebounds and 7 blocks and steals combined over his last 2 games. He's playing big minutes. It's been fantastic. And he faced Portland and Boston. Those aren't just pushover matchups. So I'm loving Vonleh. Mind you, Noah Vonleh is a guy that everyone expected to be great when he was drafted by Portland, or at least, a big-time contributor. And it was not the case. Noah Vonleh did not show up. He was drafted 9th overall in 2014 by Charlotte and played for Charlotte. Then he went to Portland. He did nothing. And now look at the guy. Like he's starting to get it done. He's at exactly a fantasy point per minute this year. And I think you go back to the well here, Dan. I don't see this being an issue. So between him and James Johnson and Wilson Chandler, Vonleh, of course, Jerebko, if he starts, he didn't start that last game, right? Those are all guys that stand out as quality plays. And Dwayne Dedmon is facing Boston, sure, but if Alex Len is out, there's another 42 low 4K guy that comes into play. It's just a stacked value spot that we have to consider here.
That makes a ton of sense, and we've talked at length about Boston and that they've struggled a bit, and that is on both sides of the basketball. When all is said and done, yes, they are still 9th over the past 10 games in defensive rating, but that's down from 2nd. And so, there's clearly a struggle going on both sides of the ball for the Celtics as they try to figure out exactly who they are with the pieces they have in place right now. You mentioned Jerebko, which was the one I sort of had a check mark next to make sure we touched off on. I am going to update for those watching on YouTube. You already know I'm going to use AD as the cover boy. So we're going to go there with the brow and let that be. Westbrook will be for a different day. Center.
Can I point something out that I completely missed until now? It's kind of important.
Please, yeah.
I'm just looking over this right now. And I noticed it earlier, and I think it just slipped my mind. This is a 12-game slate because the Timberwolves and Nets and Memphis Grizzlies and Clippers play in the afternoon.
That is right.
Yeah, I completely forgot about. I mean, it obviously was. It when I went over the players and took notes on it, but I completely forgot.
There's a noon. Yeah, I forgot about the noon and the noon and 3.
3:30. So yeah, 12 games. It's not 14, which definitely makes life a little bit easier. Not in terms of writing, but I hate when there's 14 games. 12 games it thins it out a little bit. That's actually kind of nice.
So we'll close it out here with center. You have Anthony Davis. You talked to Embiid up here in his last matchup, and clearly. Maybe not clearly, but he feels like a very strong candidate through about 1/6 of the season. Is that where we're at? 5 weeks for most valuable player. The guy's been absolutely. He needs
to be in the conversation, no doubt.
I don't know who you're voting for ahead of him right now. Then that's how I sort of take it is.
Right. You can make arguments for guys, but if
Giannis is up there, I get it, but Embiid's been.
Here's what I'm saying. If you're trying to make the argument against being able to make an argument for Embiid, I think you lose that easily, right? So if you're making an argument for Giannis or there's other guys out there that are having really good seasons, then we can talk for sure. But if you make an argument that Embiid doesn't belong in the conversation, because people are going to say, oh, you're a homer. Let's just assume that I am. Well, Joel Embiid is 5th in scoring, 4th in rebounds, and he is 5th in blocks and leads the league in double-doubles with 18 in 19 games. So, or 18 and 20 games. Oh, and he also just held Anthony Davis to 12 points, has played spectacularly on defense, and is one of the better defensive players in the entire league. He has to be in the conversation. There's no question. He has, 10 games of 30-plus points and 10-plus rebounds this year. It's wild.
Yep, right there with you. So quickly here, who are your top centers? I assume Anthony Davis, depending on roster construction, could be mentioned here. But you have Embiid, Jokic, Andre Drummond. You do have the Q tag on Whiteside in this matchup with the Chicago Bulls. Vucevic, Gobert is at 7,500 against the Lakers. And we make our way into sort of the mid-tier soon thereafter. Who are your favorite center plays on this slate?
Sure. By the way, Embiid also leads the league in free throw attempts, and is shooting 81% from the line as a center. Not bad. Obviously, I think this is a spot where he can absolutely decimate Cleveland. I'm not worried about Tristan Thompson or anybody here. We just saw him go up against Anthony Davis and show him what's up, right? We saw him, and he was in some foul trouble, but he still dropped 23 real points against Rudy Gobert. It wasn't a great game, but point is that he can put up big numbers against decent defenders, and he's faced much tougher matchups than Tristan Thompson this year. So the blowout would be your only concern. I wouldn't be surprised to see Brett Brown try and give him a little bit of rest in that case. But the truth is that this Sixers team is just letting bad teams hang around. So if there's ever a team that I think could let Cleveland stay in this game, it would be the Sixers, and then they win it late. So definitely interested there, no question. I'm going to keep playing him, especially because he's 10,600. He's $1,000 less than Davis, despite giving despite on this slate he averages the second most fantasy points among any player in the entire league. So every player, he's averaging more DraftKings points per game than Giannis. Granted. Or albeit by a small margin, more than LeBron, more than Harden, more than Westbrook, Durant by a huge margin. You get the point. So the fact that he's 10-6, the argument that he's underpriced is very much real. So Embiid is definitely going to be someone that I'm considering. I think he's discounted. He should be above 11K. I also think that Jokic makes sense depending on the site. If you're getting him at a big discount from guys like Embiid, then it makes sense. But he's just a lot more volatile of a player. What's interesting is Jokic legitimately has the same upside as Joel Embiid or close to even Davis and Giannis. We've seen the 80-point games. We've seen the monster triple-doubles. But he also has a much lower floor than these guys, which makes him a tournament-only play. But he's in a good spot against Orlando. His price is very reasonable. On FanDuel, where you have Embiid at 11.5 and Jokic at 9.6, he's $1,900 cheaper. I like that. I also like Yusuf Nurkic, who is still 6,600 and still continues to give us fantastic numbers. Last game was not great. They got blown. They lost by 43 points in Milwaukee. Amazing. But then he still gave you, north of a fantasy point per minute. His per minute production has been huge this year. And I'll just keep going back to the well with Nurkic so long as he's 6,600. Yep. You want to talk about a guy's price tag not matching his production? 6,600 on Nurkic is insane. And we're seeing Terry Stotts giving him around 30, 31 minutes a game. So I like it. Let me just keep going for a second here because there's a lot at this position. Rudy Gobert against the Lakers is a strong play, preferably in cash, because I think, at this position, the ceiling on certain players is just so much higher. Like Andre Drummond has come below 9K, and it might not be a perfect matchup, but he definitely has the height and weight advantage over Clint Capella. He got in foul trouble last game, but you'd assume he's going to play 36-plus minutes in a close game if he's out of foul trouble. It's just a stacked position once again on a huge slate. If Whiteside plays, he's a bit expensive for me, so probably not going there. Vooch tough rebounding matchup. Should be able to score, but probably not going there either. And then I do want to point out that John Collins is cheap here.
Yep.
There's other value. I'd still prefer Dedmon if Len is out, but I think it's reasonable to assume that Collins, who can produce and is a career per +1 fantasy point per minute guy, has some upside in this spot. He played 12, then 20, then 27 minutes over his first, second, and third game, respectively. Stands to reason that you could potentially see 30 minutes from one of the young guys that they really want to give good minutes to in a lost season.
As we break down this slate and we come towards the end, we have gotten back into the habit of asking for the top price play. Are you ready to close out center and talk about your favorite play above 5 digits here?
Yeah, I just if Joe Val starts again, Dan, he played 27 minutes last game. Pretty sure that matched his season high. Anytime he's this cheap, he does have slate breaking upside if he's getting the minutes. So don't forget about Joe Val. Don't forget about Yusuf Nurkic, who is also underpriced. There's just a lot, man. So all of it will be in the deep dive, but it's a really deep slate. And center, I think center might be the deepest position almost on every single slate this season, Dan. It's pretty wild.
It always makes for that intriguing dual play on DraftKings, playing one at utility and at the center spot, and where you're
right. That seems to be the popular pairing because there's too many of them, and so many of them are underpriced.
Yep, and obviously with the way they have MPE and the way you get the Garden for it, you're just getting to a point where playing 4 point guards, because you get a shooting guard, a point guard, obviously, and you can get there, but doesn't seem to make as much sense from a balance perspective. But I do want to get your take here. Above 10K, if you're building a lineup, currently you have KD, Embiid, Harden, Westbrook, LeBron, Giannis, and AD in ascending order. Who's your favorite 10K plus player? And take, obviously, cost and position into consideration here. Who are you starting your lineup construction with?
Yeah, I think it's going to be, I don't want to say starting with, because I'm going to have a lot of, if you're playing this slate, mass entering, or at least playing multiple lineups, like 5+, preferably a lot more than that. But that seems to make the most sense with how many options there are on this slate, how many good options, Dan. But Anthony Davis has got to be the guy. Now, I just do want to throw a caveat in here, and I don't want to convolute this much. But I really, really like Joel Embiid, and I really, really like Giannis Antetokounmpo. But there's no question that both teams being 13.5-point favorites at home, there is risk there. And I say it all the time, not in the business of predicting blowouts, but you and I can both agree that these are ones that do feel at least relatively easier to predict than other nights.
Agreed. And while not predicting blowouts, you have to take them into consideration.
Right. Just factor it in. Yeah.
It's all part of the context. Talk about it often. It's not the sole decision maker, but it's going to have to be part of your
right. And overall. I don't think the Pelicans are good enough as a team right now to really be blowing teams off the court. And you think about this too. If Trey Burke, if he continues to shoot even remotely well, that's really going to buoy this Knicks team in terms of an offensive standpoint and staying competitive. We saw Burke last year when he got on that run. Knicks were actually playing close games, and they just lost by 5 to the Pelicans. That game last week, the Pelicans were down by like 20 points at one point. They came roaring back, but that game came down to the wire. Against Portland, they lost by 4. They were ahead most of that game. They just beat Boston. So it's not like the Knicks are playing garbage basketball right now, like the Cavs, who have won 2 games on the year, or the Phoenix Suns, who I think have won 3 games. The Knicks are at least staying semi-competitive. This game's at Madison Square Garden. So I do think if you're looking at blowout risk, Davis faces less than these other guys, and also is in the highest projected scoring game on the entire slate.
There you have it. You find Dave on Twitter at Lofty_D, LOUGHY_D, myself at Dan Trafford, and it's Osmo_com. As I said at the top, the promo code Cyber Month is available to you. Double check that over on Osmo.com. In the free articles, you'll get it there both for Black Friday and Cyber Monday throughout the weekend. You can use it, of course, and you get 50% off your first month of the all-in package, or you get to pay 10 months for 12 months. So basically at a nice discount. You just pay for 10 months and get a full year of content. If you don't want that, you just want to check out awesemo.com, use the promo code EARLYBIRD, which gets you 1 week for free. So Dave and I will be back with you Monday morning talking NBA. On Saturday morning, you get EMAC, you get Adam talking National Basketball Association. With all that said, we wish you the best of luck. You've been listening to the DFS Early Bird from awesemo.com.